Why it worked there. The connection between traditional diet and longevity struck a chord with those seeking habits to live longer. Why it will work on TWL. The topic of nutrition and longevity connects directly with those seeking to adopt healthy habits in their senior years. Did you know that there is a place in the world where living past 100 is not a rarity, but the norm? And no, it's not a science fiction land or a futuristic city. That place exists. It is inhabited by real people with simple lives and habits that have defied modern medicine for decades. I'm talking about Okinawa, an island south of Japan, where the word longevity is not spoken, it is lived. And the secret, according to researchers who have been studying them for more than 40 years, begins with something as everyday as what they put on their plates. In this video, we're going to explore the secrets of the Okinawan Diet, one of the most studied in the world for its impact on health, disease prevention, and, above all, its link to a long, active, and happy life. But this is not a video of recipes or a list of miracle foods. It is an open door to a philosophy of life where eating becomes an act of self-care, of connection with nature, of respect for the body, and of communion with the community. And most importantly, it is a way of life that you can adapt step by step, regardless of your age, culture, or history. Let's start with an image. Imagine a 104-year-old woman sitting on the floor on a tatami mat, serving a bowl of miso soup with trembling but steady hands. Around her, grandchildren and great-grandchildren laugh as they eat purple sweet potatoes, tofu, rice, and steamed green leaves. She doesn't look like a tired old woman. She looks like a lucid, lively, present matriarch. That woman is real. Her name is Ushi Okushima, and until recently, she still grew her own vegetables. So, what makes the Okinawan way of eating so special? The answer begins with an ancient principle that we also saw in the first script, Hara Hachi Bu. But this time, let's look at it from a nutritional perspective. Hara Hachi Bu means eating until you are 80% full. It's not just about small portions. It's about listening to your body, eating slowly, and stopping before you feel completely satisfied. This habit has powerful backing. Researchers at the University of Tokyo and the University of Wisconsin have shown that moderate calorie restriction activates genes related to longevity and significantly reduces the risk of metabolic diseases, including type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and certain types of cancer. But in Okinawa, they don't count calories. They count moments. They eat slowly, with gratitude, with connection. Dr. Craig Wilcox, one of the authors of the Okinawa Centenarian study, says, Okinawans don't eat until they're full. They eat until they're not hungry. That small nuance has made all the difference for generations. But it's not just how much they eat, it's what they eat. The second secret of the Okinawan diet is its plant-based foundation. The traditional Okinawan diet is 80 to 90% plant-based. This does not mean that they are completely vegetarian, but rather that their diet is dominated by local vegetables, such as purple sweet potato, imo, rich in antioxidants, and fiber goya, a bitter melon that regulates sugar levels. Artisanal tofu, a pure source of vegetable protein. Seaweed such as kombu and hijiki, full of minerals such as iodine, iron, and calcium. Mustard greens, spinach, carrots, daikon, and sprouts. In addition, they consume a small portion of rice, not in excess, and legumes such as soybeans in multiple forms, miso, natto, edamame. Animal protein is consumed in moderation. A little oily fish, some slow-cooked pork, especially on holidays, and very little processed red meat. And in case you're wondering, no, they don't eat dessert every day. Sweetness comes from fresh fruit, small amounts of brown sugar, and occasionally glutinous rice with sesame or mochi. According to the National Center for Geriatrics and Gerontology in Japan, this diet reduces chronic inflammation, which is one of the main causes of accelerated aging and degenerative diseases. In Okinawan culture, food is not a punishment or a reward. It is medicine. It is a bond. It is balance. However, there is something even deeper behind their diet. The third secret, perhaps the least obvious. Okinawans do not eat alone. It is not common to see an elderly person eating in front of the television or with a cell phone in their hand. They eat in community, with family, with friends, in silence or conversing, but in company. And this also has an impact on health. A study conducted by Tohoku University found that older people who eat alone have a 50% higher risk of depression and a 20% higher risk of mortality from all causes compared to those who share meals. This is not just a statistic. It is a wake-up call, because maybe you can't change all your eating habits overnight. But you can invite someone to eat with you, or find a community, even a virtual one, to share this experience with. Japanese longevity begins in the kitchen, yes, but it flourishes at the shared table. And now I want you to think about something. What would happen if you started applying these first 3 principles today? Eat until you are satisfied, not full. Eat mostly fresh vegetables and natural foods. Eat in company or with intention, knowing that you are feeding more than just your body. What would change in your energy, your digestion, your mood? Mrs. Ushi, the centenarian woman I mentioned earlier, said something that stuck with me. When I eat sweet potatoes that I planted myself, I feel my body fill with earth, sunshine, and love. And that keeps me alive. Deep down, that's what we all seek. To feel that what goes into our bodies is not just food, but life. And that, dear viewer, is within reach of your plate. Now take a deep breath. Visualize your next meal and ask yourself, how can I make it an act of love? When you study the Okinawan diet, you realize that what is most valuable is not just what they eat, but how they eat and why they do so. There is an invisible logic to their eating habits that has been woven together over centuries. It is a silent wisdom born of respect for the body and nature. A key element that surprises many researchers is the low-calorie density of their meals. In other words, the foods they eat are high in nutrients, but low in calories. This means that their bodies get what they need without being overloaded. And that is pure gold for longevity. Studies by Dr. Makoto Suzuki, pioneer of the Okinawa Centenarian study, showed that this combination, high nutrition, low-calorie load, promotes better mitochondrial function, improves insulin sensitivity, and reduces cellular aging. But what's most fascinating is that they don't do this because they read a science article. They do it because it's part of their culture, because that's how their grandmothers taught them, because they've seen it work generation after generation. And here's one of the most visual secrets of this way of life: the colors on the plate. In Okinawan cuisine, a dish is never monochromatic. There are always contrasts: purple sweet potatoes, green cooked leaves, white tofu, orange Japanese pumpkin, kabocha, brown miso, red peppers. This variety of colors is not accidental. It reflects the diversity of phytonutrients present in each food, and that translates into a protective shield against chronic disease. While many Western cultures seek quick satiety and prioritize quantity, in Okinawa, balance, rhythm, and visual and nutritional harmony are honored. Eating is literally an aesthetic act. This aesthetic has an emotional impact, because when a dish is beautiful, We eat more slowly. And when we eat more slowly, we chew better, digest better, and absorb better. We even release more serotonin, the hormone that regulates mood and that we so desperately need as we age. Food, then, ceases to be a routine and becomes a moment of mindfulness. But there is also ancient wisdom in when they eat. Okinawans don't eat 5 meals a day, nor do they skip breakfast to make up for heavy dinners. Their pattern is simple: a nutritious breakfast, a moderate lunch, and a very light dinner, often before nightfall. This coincides with recent research on circadian rhythms. Scientists at the Salk Institute in California have shown that adjusting eating times to the natural light cycle, eating when the sun is up and stopping when it gets dark, promotes cell regeneration, improves sleep quality, and reduces the risk of metabolic diseases. The body has an internal clock, and in Okinawa, they learned to synchronize their eating with that clock long before science confirmed it. And what happens when an entire society internalizes these habits as normal? Something beautiful happens. Prevention replaces correction. In other words, they don't eat healthy to lower their cholesterol. They eat healthy because they've always done so. Because that lifestyle has been passed down, not as a medical rule, but as an act of love and respect. And there is an even more subtle but fundamental point: the emotional relationship with food. In many parts of the world, food is fraught with anxiety, dieting, guilt, prohibitions, emotional binging. In Okinawa, on the other hand, food is associated with moments of gratitude, simplicity, and celebration. Every meal begins with a short phrase, "itadakimasu," which means, "I receive with gratitude," and it ends with "gochi susama deshita," which could be translated as, "Thank you for the feast." It doesn't matter if it was just a simple bowl of rice with vegetables. They give thanks as if it were a feast. This positive emotional state when eating has physiological consequences. It has been proven that eating with gratitude and calm reduces inflammation, improves digestion, and regulates the immune system. Because the body not only digests food, it also digests emotions. And if what enters the mouth is accompanied by guilt, stress, or haste, the body interprets it as a threat. On the other hand, if what enters is accompanied by gratitude, beauty, and pause, the body opens up. It relaxes, and it heals. There is a story that illustrates this masterfully. One day, a doctor visited a 102-year-old woman in Okinawa. He wanted to know her secret to living so long. As she stirred a pot of vegetable broth, she replied, "I have no secrets. I just cook my food, eat sitting cross-legged, and give thanks for still being here. The body knows that if I treat it with love, it will take me where I need to go." That woman did not have a degree in nutrition, but she had the most important things: awareness, wisdom, and a healthy relationship with what nourished her. In the end, the real secret is not in a magic ingredient. It is in the sum of small decisions that, when repeated every day, become a lighter, more serene, and longer way of life. You may not have access to purple sweet potatoes or Japanese seaweed, but you can fill your plate with color. Eat more calmly. Listen to your body. Give thanks before each bite. You may not be able to replicate the exact Okinawan diet, but you can honor the spirit with which they eat. That spirit that transforms food into medicine, the table into an altar. The act of eating becomes a ritual of life. Because what makes them live longer is not just what they eat, it's how they live while they do it. If you pay attention, you'll notice that Okinawans don't eat just to nourish themselves. They eat to connect with their bodies, with the land that feeds them, with those around them, and also with those who came before them. In many homes, recipes are passed down, with special reverence. It's not just a list of steps or ingredients. It's an act of continuity. Cooking the same dish your grandmother cooked is not tradition. It's belonging. And that also nourishes, because the emotional memory linked to food has a direct impact on our mental health. Kyoto University conducted a longitudinal study of older adults and found that those who maintained family rituals related to cooking and eating had lower rates of cognitive decline and depressive symptoms. This makes sense. By keeping these affectionate routines alive, they also keep their minds alive. But there is something even deeper: the way food is produced and selected. In Okinawa, most older people grow their own food or buy from small local producers. They have home gardens where they grow sweet potatoes, tomatoes, onions, radishes, leafy greens, and medicinal herbs. They don't do this just out of economic necessity. They do it because contact with the earth keeps them active, grounded, in constant motion, and with a clear purpose. This practice has a name: natural movement. Okinawans don't go to the gym. They don't follow structured routines. Their day is simply filled with micro movements: bending down to pick something up off the floor, watering the plants, walking to the market, sweeping, kneading dough. This constant but gentle physical activity, known as NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, prolongs life and reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease even more than occasional intense exercise. In simple terms, they don't tire themselves out in one go. They move gently throughout the day, and that's part of their longevity. Another essential key is the low presence of ultra-processed foods in their daily diet. Although modern supermarkets have arrived in Okinawa, older people still prefer to prepare their own food from scratch, using fresh ingredients without labels, artificial chemicals, or additives. And this factor, although obvious, has a huge consequence: less inflammation, fewer metabolic diseases, and better gut microbiota. Dr. Walter Longo, an expert in aging and nutrition, argues that traditional diets like the Okinawan diet are the best example of effective nutritional intervention for the prevention of pathological aging. And here it's worth pausing, because you, reading this, may be thinking, that sounds ideal, but I don't live in Okinawa. I don't have time to cook like that. I don't have a garden. I don't even know how to make tofu. That's okay. You don't have to replicate everything. You just need to adapt what you can, with intention. This isn't about copying, but about finding inspiration and making wiser, more conscious, and more vibrant daily choices. Maybe you can start by cooking more from scratch, or eating with more presence, or growing a plant, or eating less processed meat, or replacing a heavy dinner with homemade soup and a little rice. Small gestures, big impact. And if you want to know where to start, here's a practical guide based on Okinawan principles. Fill at least half of your plate with vegetables. Reduce your consumption of salt, sugar, and refined oils. Cook more at home and less from packages. Eat with people when you can, or in mindful silence if you're alone. Give thanks before every meal, even if it's simple. Eat slowly and stop when you're 80% full. Avoid eating late at night and make your last meal of the day a light one. You don't need perfection, just commitment. And now, let's return to a concept we've already mentioned, but that deserves your full attention: the emotional relationship with food. In Okinawa, there are no labels such as forbidden, guilt, or cheating when it comes to eating. There is balance, joy, and respect. That's why when you approach food with fear or shame, your body also goes into defense mode. On the other hand, when you do so with gratitude and love, your digestive system opens up like a flower in the sun. And that difference, although invisible, changes everything. Food can be a punishment or a gift. It depends on how you look at it, how you experience it. A 96-year-old woman named Tomiko said that her secret to living so long was simple. I chew with joy. If there is joy in my mouth, my body receives it and stores it. That phrase encapsulates the wisdom of generations. And maybe you're here looking for a formula, a magic recipe, a precise diet. But what the Japanese people of Okinawa teach us is something much more powerful. It's not about radical change, but about returning to the essentials. Because what nourishes life is not just food, it's how you choose it, prepare it, share it, and give thanks for it. It's the story you tell while you serve it. It's what you feel while you chew. It's the peace you feel afterwards. And that doesn't cost money, just attention. Maybe today you'll be inspired to look at your kitchen with new eyes, to look at your plate and ask yourself, does this bring me closer to the life I want to live? Does this honor my body, my history, my future? Because every meal is a decision, and every decision can add or subtract years, but above all, quality to your time. And the beauty of it all is that it's never too late to start. When you look at how the centenarians of Okinawa live, it's clear that their longevity is not based solely on what they eat. It's the attitude with which they eat. There is no separation between body and spirit when it comes to eating. Each meal becomes a small, intimate ceremony where the act of nourishing oneself is also an act of reconciliation with life. One of the latest secrets that surprises those who study this culture is their relationship with natural fasting, or rather, with the space between meals. Older adults in Okinawa are not constantly eating. They do not snack between meals. In fact, many practice what is now known as time-restricted eating, although they never called it that. They simply have an early dinner and do not eat again until the next morning. This space allows the body to enter a cellular cleansing process called autophagy. And according to Nobel Prize winner Yoshinori Ohsumi, this process helps eliminate toxins, recycle damaged cellular components, and keep metabolic health in balance. In other words, eating well also means knowing when to stop eating. And just as they are mindful of when they eat, they are also mindful of how they feel when they do. They don't eat in front of screens. They don't eat in a hurry. They eat calmly. And when they slip up, they don't punish themselves. They just return to balance. Because that's another of the great messages of this culture. There is no guilt, only return. And that is deeply liberating for all of us who grew up in cultures where food is a constant source of internal conflict. Now imagine this scene. A 100-year-old grandmother sitting at a small wooden table with a bowl of rice, seaweed, vegetables, and soup. Before taking the first bite, she brings her hands together and closes her eyes for a moment. That simple gesture holds centuries of wisdom. It is a silent reminder that you are alive, that you can eat, that your body still sustains you, and that, in itself, is an everyday miracle. That is why longevity, in reality, is not the goal. It is the natural result of a life well lived. In Okinawa, people don't obsess over living longer. They focus on living well today. And as a result, they live longer. This approach can be summed up in a single word you already know: Ikigai. Ikigai isn't just a reason to live. It's the intersection between what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what can sustain you. It's the silent engine that drives you to get up every morning with a sense of purpose, even if you're over 80. And yes, food also becomes an expression of Ikigai. Because choosing what to eat, how to eat it, and with whom to share it is also a way of building a purposeful life. Many older adults in Okinawa have their own small gardens, not just to harvest food, but because it gives them meaning. Because caring for a plant and watching it grow is a mirror of their own life cycle. Because cooking for a grandchild is a way to continue caring. Because teaching others what they know is a way to stay alive. And that is perhaps the greatest secret of all, to continue feeling useful, not out of obligation, but out of love. They take care of their bodies not to fulfill an aesthetic ideal, but because they still have something to give. They watch what they eat because they want to continue playing with their grandchildren, walking to the temple, laughing with their friends, and preparing that soup their mother taught them to make. So, if you're reading this and you've ever thought it was too late to change, to improve your health, to reconnect with your body, let me tell you something very clearly. It's never too late to come back to yourself. It's never too late to choose to eat more mindfully, with more gratitude, with more intention. It's never too late to turn your kitchen into your place of healing, to use your hands as tools of care, to serve yourself a plate that, more than filling your stomach, brings you back to life. Today, you could start with something very small. Maybe make a simple soup, walk to the store to buy fresh vegetables, eat in silence and give thanks for every bite. Maybe write a note with the foods that are good for you, or call someone to share a meal. Or simply look at your plate and say, "This gives me life." Small gestures, big transformations. And if this message resonated with you, if you feel there is something you can apply starting today, I invite you to share it in the comments. Tell us what your ikigai is. What food connects you to your childhood? What gesture will you adopt this week to honor your body? And if you know someone who needs to hear this, a friend, a parent, an aunt, yourself, send them this video. Because sometimes a simple story can be the beginning of a big change. If you liked this content, subscribe and click the bell to receive more stories, more science, and more inspiration designed just for you. And remember, we're not here just to count the years. We're here to make every year count. Thank you for being here and for taking this step toward a fuller, tastier, more mindful life.